Job searching for executives and professionals has fundamentally changed. The strategies that worked even 2 years ago are no longer enough in today's AI driven, highly competitive market. If you're an experienced professional or an executive trying to land your next role, you don't need to apply to more jobs. You need a smarter, more strategic approach. In this video, I'm going to show you why the traditional job search is failing executives and professionals in 2026, the exact strategies top candidates are using to get jobs faster, and how to position yourself so companies compete for you rather than the other way around. If you don't know me, I'm Portia of Fly High Coaching, where we've helped thousands of executives and professionals soar to their full potential in their careers. The first thing that you need to know is that the traditional job search is broken. And I'm sure many of you already know that. Applying online is no longer a viable primary strategy at the experienced and senior levels. This is for a whole lot of reasons. First, there's the applicant pool problem. So experienced and senior roles attract hundreds and sometimes even thousands of applicants, depending on the type of organization that has put out the job posting. With that in mind, AI screening tools filter candidates out before humans ever see them. And even highly qualified leaders are getting screened out for so many reasons just based on their resume and their application that they put in. So you've got to get past the computer, right? You've got to get past the AI. Second, job boards are designed for volume, not strategy. So platforms like LinkedIn, they prioritize activity, not necessarily a perfect fit. Some of you who network with recruiters know that there's a whole recruiting platform for recruiters on LinkedIn. And one of the things that the algorithm looks for is how active a person is, because they're going to rank them higher to recruiters as someone who's more likely to respond to a message. Executive roles are often posted right after an internal candidate is already identified. In a lot of instances, it's really not a level playing field, especially if you're an external candidate. You're competing against someone on the inside or multiple people on the inside. Also, many postings are market testing. The term that has been used more recently are phantom jobs, jobs that they're not really actively hiring for that position. Instead, they're testing the market and seeing who's out there. I know this is a lot. So if you want help structuring your job search the smart way, download our free Smart Job Seekers Guide linked below. Another issue is that your experience alone is no longer a differentiator. Everyone at this level has strong credentials. Everyone has experience. And a lot of times people have similar levels of experience. Employers prioritize perceived value, not just your past job title. And so you really sculpting that perceived value is important. Another way to think about it is that branding and positioning now can outweigh your tenure at a previous company or in a previous position. So something else, to think about is why apply and wait kills your momentum during a job search. Passive strategy like that leads to long and frustrating searches where people are saying, hey, I've applied for 50 jobs, 100 jobs, 300 jobs, right, over the last couple of months, and they're frustrated. When you're doing that, also, there's a lack of a feedback loop, and it prevents you being able to optimize aspects of your application, your interviewing skills, to really tweak things to be a more compelling candidate for that role and also other roles in the future. And just applying and waiting also creates this reactive, not proactive job search. So people think, all I can do is sit around and wait for job postings to pop up on the internet. There's so much more than you can do, and there's so much more that you should be doing. So, if applying online alone isn't the only answer, then what actually works in 2026? The second thing that I really want to highlight is that modern job search strategies that are working for executives and experienced professionals. In this case, success comes from visibility, positioning, and strategic relationship building. So you need to be doing all of those things simultaneously. And that is where people have issues. And that is where people need support, to be honest with you. The first thing you want to do is you want to build a clear value proposition. So we have a whole podcast episode talking about creating your own value proposition if you want to know more about that. But to give you an overview, you want to define your niche. So what is that thing that you are known for, that thing that you are best at? What encompasses your strengths and then also past results that you've gotten? Is that around transformation? Is it around growth? Is it turnaround of failed business units or failed teams prior to you working with them? Is it innovation, creativity? Whatever your niche is, you want to define that and be able to speak to that in your value proposition. Also, you want to align your experience with business outcomes. So I mentioned that earlier. What are the actual results that you've been known for? Maybe it's an increase in revenue, an increase in profit, improved efficiency. Maybe you helped with the scaling process. Those are all business outcomes that can be part of your value proposition. And you want to put this all into a compelling narrative, not just a resume. So this should be included in your resume, and you should also speak to this in an interview. It should be on your LinkedIn profile. It's even best if you are posting on LinkedIn to make sure that you're posting on aspects of your niche on a regular basis so people get to know you for that. You also want to leverage strategic networking, not just regular networking. For networking to be more strategic, you want to focus on decision makers, not just peers. So this also requires a mindset shift. A lot of people feel most comfortable around their peers. Let's say you were a senior manager in your last role. Well, a lot of times people feel most comfortable networking with other senior managers, but you want to make sure that you're networking with decision makers, executives, whoever that end hiring manager would be for your role. You need to be networking with those kinds of people, not just those who are on your hierarchical level. You want to build these relationships before the opportunities exist. And this is a hard part. You could activate your network in multiple ways to do that. You can also use targeted outreach with value-driven conversations. We've talked about that quite a bit before on this channel. Something else to consider is that thought leadership is your new resume. Consistent LinkedIn content establishes authority. And as I mentioned before, if you can post regularly on similar topics or the same topic in your niche, people begin to know you for that. You also want to share insights, not just job updates. A lot of times people only use LinkedIn to share an update that they got a new job or they got a promotion or they got a certification. But there's so much more that you could use LinkedIn for in terms of your posting strategy. This is important because your posts demonstrate how you think, not just what you've done. So people will follow your posts and start to feel like they know you, they can identify with you, they trust you, and they're interested in learning more about you. A lot of recruiters that I network with tell me that they go and look and see what someone's posted, and that gives them an idea of, hey, is this the type of person that would be a good fit at this company? Is this the type of person that we want to interview? You also want to tap into the hidden job market. And I'm sure many of you know this, but 70 to 80% of executive roles are never publicly posted online in what I call the public domain. So people never even know about them. In order to learn about those types of roles on the hidden job market, you've got to be connected. You've got to be networking strategically. Those kinds of opportunities, they come through referrals, boards and internal pipelines. So people have to know you. And you want to position yourself to be recommended, not just discovered, right? So in order to be recommended to that point, people need to know, like, and trust you. There needs to be a sense of respect, influence, and authority that you have. And so LinkedIn is a great way to start building that. And then you want to work with recruiters the right way. Again, this is so important. You have to be strategic with how you work with recruiters. We have another podcast episode all on working with recruiters. But an overview of this is that recruiters don't just find jobs for you. You must be marketable first. So your whole personal brand, your niche, any thought leadership, any content that you're putting out, all needs to be cohesive. And then when you are meeting with recruiters, they can see that, and then you will be top of mind for them to recommend. Also, you want to build relationships with specialized recruiters in your niche. When we work with clients in our programs, we have a whole exercise called Finding the Right Recruiters. And so we walk you through how to do that. For this video, you can just think about how can you find those specialized recruiters? And then once you meet these people and you interact with these recruiters, you want to stay visible and relevant in their ecosystem. Again, you can do that via LinkedIn, connecting with them and posting content. You could do that via email, connecting with them and maybe sending them an email every few months, just letting them know what you're doing, or updates on your job search, updates on your resume, things like that. But even with the right strategy, there's one thing that determines whether you get the offer or you get overlooked. Finally, you want to position yourself as the obvious choice. At experienced and executive levels, hiring decisions are about trust, clarity, and impact. So to do that and communicate those things, you want to sell outcomes, not responsibilities. So there's this shifting the language in your resume, the language on your LinkedIn profile, the language in your interviews, to not what you did, not just your roles and responsibilities, but what you delivered. What were the results? What were the outcomes? And to that point, you want to make sure that you quantify results. This is a huge area that people miss. The vast majority of the clients that we work with, they have some great responsibilities, maybe some projects that they've outlined, but there's no metrics speaking to the scope and scale at which they worked. There aren't any quantifiable aspects that they have to describe those things. So you can do that by talking about revenue growth, cost savings, transformation metrics, adding numbers, percentages, dollar values to those things. And then you also want to speak in business language, not necessarily just functional tasks. So what did your work do for the business at a wider scale? You also want to master strategic level storytelling. So your whole career narrative must be clear and compelling. A lot of people need help with this. They are rambling. They're talking about what I used to do and then now what I want to do, but it's not really connecting with people. You want to connect your past experience to your future value, right? Future value, not just necessarily what you want to be doing. Also, when you're thinking about storytelling, you want to show progression. You want to show leadership and strategic thinking. So, take a moment and reflect on past projects, programs, key initiatives that you were a part of that were successful, and think about your progression, your leadership, maybe collaboration, communication on those types of initiatives, and how your strategic thinking was an asset to the whole initiative. You also want to make sure that you've aligned your personal brand across all platforms. So your resume, your LinkedIn profile, and your interviews must tell the same story. A lot of recruiters look for consistency, and if they find inconsistency amongst those things, what they'll do is they'll eliminate you from contention. Consistency also builds credibility and trust with hundreds or thousands of other candidates out there. If they find inconsistencies with your background, they are looking to eliminate people to get down to a short list, right? So you don't want to give them a reason to eliminate you. So you want to remove any mixed messaging that you have across your personal brand. You want to prepare for high stakes conversations. So these types of executive and experienced professional interviews, they're about strategy, not just fit. And that is a really important distinction to know about. You want to be ready to discuss your vision, your leadership philosophy, decision making, how you make the decisions that you make. You want to show how you solve complex business problems. All of those things are going to set you apart from other people. And then finally, you want to create demand instead of chasing opportunities. So you want to position yourself as a solution to business challenges. So again, that's in your positioning. That is in how you talk about yourself, how you talk about the outcomes and the results. You want to engage in industry conversations and visibility opportunities. Those can be online or offline. And you want to make companies feel like they need you. And if you're doing a good job with consistency across your personal brand, that becomes a lot easier. So if you take anything away from this video, let it be this. The job search in 2026 is not about applying. It's about positioning. The professionals who are landing the best roles aren't the most qualified on paper. They're the most strategic in how they show up, communicate their value, and build relationships. So instead of asking, where should I apply? Start asking, how am I positioning myself to be found, trusted, and hired? And when you get that right, your entire job search changes. If you are an executive or senior professional and you want help refining your positioning, building your strategy, or accelerating your job search, check out the link below and learn more about how we can support you.